Hello, welcome to Southern Sober and Sassy. Happy belated 4th of July.
Yippee!
Yay! I'm Amy,
Christy!
and we're here to talk today about freedom.
Heck yeah.
We're all entitled to freedom, by the way, if we work for it. We're entitled to our freedom. Freedom from substance abuse, freedom from abuse from other people, freedom from behavioral that needs to be shifted. You know what? We're also free from untreated mental health. We get the opportunity to get the help we deserve. And I think a lot of times, especially with loved ones, they know we need help, but they don't realize we deserve it. And I think we deserve it. I think everyone deserves to get healthy. I heard a long time ago a professor say, what happens to us in our childhood we may not have been able to control, but is 1,000% our responsibility to get the help for what we need to get better. So we're talking about freedom, and I'm making sure we're on, and yes, we're rolling. So Christy, tell me about what you think about freedom.
Well, one thing that I want to say before I forget it, you brought up untreated mental illness, and I have the freedom to have healthy medication to where I can have a stable, balanced life. And when we are dealing with substance abuse, sometimes all of that is such this big ball of gray area, and the mental illness is thrown in, and the crack and the alcohol and the pot and the bipolar and the schizophrenia, and it really just becomes this one big high, and you're not able to differentiate between the two. And a good friend of mine, she was my house manager back in when I ran sober living homes for women. She had mental illness, she had schizophrenia and bipolar, and I could not tell you how many times I took her to the psych ward to get her medication balanced out, and she was also an alcoholic, and I took her through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, but that was all that I could do, and I had to humbly say to her, this is all that I know how to do. I only know how to walk you through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Anything else, I am not a doctor. I can drive you to the right place and say, here is my precious friend who is taking responsibility for her mental illness. And she said, okay. But I learned so much from Shauna about mental illness. And I remember one time we had pulled up to the psych ward, and tears were just rolling down her face, and she looked at me and she said, I hate my mental illness. I don't want my mental illness. I mean, she was just bawling. And, she had not had a drink in 2.5 years at that point. And, but her mental illness was very sensitive. And, it was just something that she really had to acutely watch after with her medication. And she was so responsible for it. And I was so proud of her. And I just told her, I was like, I'm right here beside you. I'm so proud of you. But she was able to pull those two things apart and say, okay, this is mental illness and I have alcoholism.
Yeah.
They are not the same. They cannot be treated the same. But I don't like it, but I've got it. And man, she became such a mentor to so many other women that came into our homes with mental illness, and she would let them know it's okay. It is okay. But anyway, flip side of that is untreated mental illness.
Yeah.
And I am allowed to have boundaries with people that I love. I am allowed to have boundaries with people that have untreated mental illness. And I'm acutely aware of that. And so, yeah, there's that. I just wanted to say that before I forgot. when you told me what the topic was when we were sitting outside, I was like, "That's a great topic, Amy Cooper." I said, freedom comes in many different forms: mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. Freedom comes in so many different forms. The number one thing that comes to my mind is I am free from alcohol obsession of the mind. Just that alone is enough for me. For this is just me and my story. That gnawing obsession, gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it. I can get away with it. I'll cover it up. I'll pay my way out. I'll call somebody to, I'm above the law. I'll pay somebody to get me out. Blah, 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 blah. That gnawing obsession, that's gone. That mental obsession. I have freedom from my own mind. Oh my gosh.
I love that.
That alone is enough.
Yeah.
That came, the only way that came was through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I fought those steps. I wasn't going to work them. I wasn't going to do it, blah, blah, blah. And who went back to the liquor store? Me. Time and time and time again. And, AA would just sit there and cross their arms and tap their foot and be like, she'll be back. Here she comes again. She done it again, and they were right. And it was a process of elimination. I beat myself into a state of reasonableness. And I have that freedom. And just that alone is enough. Physical freedom, I'm not in jail. I deserved a DUI and child endangerment every single day. And I do not take that lightly. I deserve to be in jail, and I wasn't, and that's called grace. It's called ridiculous grace. And, I'm not locked up. I have physical freedom. Financial freedom just comes from straight up praying and hustling and discipline. I go on and on and on about discipline. That's a whole different topic. But emotional freedom, that took a long time because I was dominated by my emotions. And, you can probably elaborate a whole lot better than I can because I just get jacked up with my feelings. And, Joyce Meyer says it best. Feelings are overrated. And feelings for me are like liquor stores. I just try to stay away from them.
Yeah.
I just try and stay away from them. I lived so emotionally dominated that I did what I felt. And that took a long time and a whole lot of step work, a whole lot of praying, a whole lot of people moving away from me before that really got my attention for me to change my behavior. So much of that for me was to simply stop doing what I had been doing. People ask me all the time, how'd you change? And I'm like, well, I stopped doing 75% of the things that I had been doing. I didn't do anything different. I just stopped doing what I had been doing. So much of it was my mouth. Just be quiet. 2 simple words. Be quiet.
I love it. I love you just said that. I didn't change really doing anything. I stopped doing it. And one of the reasons we're talking about physical freedom is, I went to the wedding this weekend and I was in Virginia. Well, I just kind of pulled up my map in Alderson, West Virginia, where I spent almost 2 years there.
Oh.
Their federal prison camp. It was 3 hours away. And it was like, oh my God. I mean, that freedom, just that feeling of knowing that I'm not there anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about those women that are there and knowing that, having that exit date is what, I looked at. But I will tell you this, I think we've talked about this, and I know you've done just like jail ministries and stuff. I remembered I was doing the book, The 12 Steps, The Women's Way, by Stephanie Covington. I went to Walton County Jail and did that with the girls, I guess it's been about 3 years ago. And I remember walking out, I got to walk out of that jail every day. And, I'm grateful by God's grace. I'm not the same woman I used to be because I would just like want to fight. I mean, just like, anger, and pent up anger, and I laugh about this now, but I am a woman of grace now. And what I mean by that is I'm not perfect, okay? I'm not, but I know my limits, and I know I play that tape forward. And I know that, just like you were talking about being controlled with our emotions, is I know and have that sense and that gut when to walk away and being emotionally healthy. I was talking to our sponsor. This was probably last year, and I was sitting there with her, and we were talking about emotional, because I had tapped into, there's a whole thing by Bill W. It's a side piece. It's called emotional sobriety. And she told me, she said, Amy, if you do not work on your emotional sobriety, this disease will take you out.
Yep.
And I agreed with her, and I remember doing IFS back in 2018. And I went through, Dick Schwartz's internal family systems, and being able to sit in the 6 chairs and recognizing what my role was in my life and in, my family's life, and being able to process pain, shame, and guilt. But I also remember, when I came back from Arizona, I was a different person. And it's because, I had a lot, I became free when I went and saw, somatic therapy, and realizing that I still was holding on to shame, blame, and guilt, from things that I had still done. And I remember coming home and sitting with her, and I said, I don't want to die from this disease. And she said, I don't want you to either, but if you do not handle your emotional sobriety, it will take you out.
Yeah.
Because whether you drink or drug again, Amy, that's not it. It's whether you stay there because you are such one to hold on to things that probably needed to be let go a long time ago. So, and she shared with me, she's known people who had been sober for so many years and stayed stagnant and complacent. And then they went back out, and they had so much shame, they wouldn't come back in the rooms and say, hey, I screwed up, and being able to identify the emotions of what led them there, and they would commit suicide. And, which brings me, I was talking to a friend this past week. I'd sent her a text and just said, Happy 4th of July. And a girl that I went to high school with, Christy, she committed suicide. And it was the past week. And I know another girl who committed suicide that I grew up with in my neighborhood. And I'm just like, I understand that feeling of wanting to take your life. I attempted my own. I thought, I don't want to be here anymore, but God's grace, and He had a plan, and I know He has plans for all of us, but knowing that I'm still here and living and breathing that is freedom for me. And I don't want to take that for granted. I don't know when my last breath will be, but I do know now that, if, like you said, and you hit it spot on, if we can take care of ourselves emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, if we can continue working on ourselves on a daily, we get that daily reprieve, that we don't have to be emotionally bankrupt, which keeps us behind the bars of shame, blame, guilt, grief, and not processing. Because, if we don't feel it, we can't heal it.
Why do we drink and drug? To change the way that we feel. And so the word feelings is like probably at the top of my list.
Yeah.
And if my sponsor would say to me so many times, the number one statement that she said to me that the whole entire first year was, stop being dominated by your emotions. Stop being dominated by your emotions. Keyword was dominated. And, because I would say to her, I'd be like, Andrea, my kids pissed me off. My ex-husband was an asshole. Blah, blah, blah. My boss was a jerk, or somebody stole an account from me. It's like, there is justified anger, and she said, and she said, that's a very valid point. but you are extreme. And most addicts and alcoholics
Oh yeah.
are extreme people. I'm either really, really, really angry up here, or I just shut down and I disappear.
Right.
Or I'm really, really, really happy, or I'm really, really, really sad. There was never balance in my life. God gave us emotions. So let's just, because I would fight that emotional freedom and the emotional stability and the feelings and it being dominated by my I would fight it. And I would feel my feelings so hard, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of that was a lot of that had to do with an underlying attention seeking. That it got me attention. Now, I didn't realize that till I came into recovery and I'm reading through the 12 and 12. The 12 and 12 talks about that. And so it really started to make sense to me, and that the onion started to be peeled back, that I missed out on attention as a child. And so I overdid it as a child and through my teens to get attention. And so anyway, that was part of it. But when I first started to have awareness about it, I was like, just bring the feeling from 100 down to 75. Just feel it at 75%. And that was a big deal for me. That was a huge accomplishment for me. And then, I did that for a little while. And then I felt it at 50%. My sponsor was like, all right, now we're just going to feel anger at 50% this time. What can you do to move it from 100 down to 75? All right, you did good. Now what can you do to move it from 75 down to 50? All right, you did good. So much. And then she would say to me, okay, how can you get rid of it altogether? Stop answering the phone.
Yep.
Oh, but I'm important. Oh, but they need me. Oh, but that place can't go on without me. Ego, ego, ego. So here's all these other things that really started to come up to the surface. The attention seeking and then the ego. So once both of those were brought to the front, and I'm looking at those with defects of character, God comes in, it's going to make me cry. God comes in and says, now that you have said, yes, that is me. Because I have to admit it. Anything you name can be fixed.
That's right.
That's when God came in and said, I'm gonna cushion your blow a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come in and be the middleman. I'm gonna turn their attention away from you. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna soften their heart. I'm gonna turn your attention away from that situation to where your attention is not even on that anymore. I'm gonna give you something new, and he'd give me a new sponsee. To where all my focus was on her instead of my boss and my ex-husband. He's my ex-husband for a reason. He's your ex. Act like it. That's what my sponsor told me.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
So anyway, when I realized all that, it was probably about 2 years sober, going into my third year. I had the freedom of experiencing that, of not being angry. And having happy children that were not afraid of me.
Yeah.
That was a game changer. That was
I bet.
hard to say, what I just said.
Yeah.
Anyway, I still said it though. Once I experienced the freedom of not being an angry woman, I didn't want to go back. And so I put more effort into the asset column
Instead of the liability.
instead of the liability.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? F them, F that, F them, F that. Sponsor lady was right after all. And man, I just got a whole lot happier. And I got a whole lot happier and a whole lot happier and a whole lot happier. And once you get that feeling and that baggage is gone, that was my new addiction. That was this spiritual addiction that really started to kick in. And that I looked at my higher power, God, very differently. And I was just like, you really are paying attention to me.
Yeah.
You know, thank you. And I needed a whole lot of help. And you never gave up on me, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And my relationship with him, you know, instead of them, became primary.
Yeah. I understand that. I mean, I understand that because, I mean, other people were more, I put other people even more important than me. That people pleasing and that codependency. Even after I first got sober. You know, their feelings and how they felt was more important than how I felt. What? I'm allowed to have feelings?
Right.
You know, and I believe that my freedom comes from, I have the freedom of fear from my feelings. I don't have to fear them.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw myself, like you said, I mean, I was putting everybody else in front of my feelings. I didn't even know. You know, a homework assignment that I was given and now I give to people is watching the movie Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts. What's your favorite egg? How do you like your eggs? What's your favorite color? What do you like to do? Did you know, Christy, up until probably 2000, because I came home 2000, like 13. So probably 2013, 14, I mean, I didn't even really know what my favorite hobby was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what my favorite color was. It was always everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how I like my, oh yeah, whatever you want, I'll do. Yeah, you like that? Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now my favorite colors, one of my favorite color is green and then red. I love black too. Because black is neutral and it makes you look skinny. I mean, like thins you down. But you know, I love scary movies.
I do too.
I love Mexico. This is still true. Mexican's my favorite. I love my eggs sunny side up. I'm quirky. I love a lot of healthy things. I love to run. I love to read. You know, whether it's on my Kindle, whether it's which I prefer paperback book, but you know, I'm always seeking knowledge. I always want to be the student, but I know who I am, and you've been part of that over these past 2 years. So accolades and grateful for you because I've brought you things, and I said, "What about this? What about this?" You know, but I'm learning to be better of which. I try not to be a bitch. I mean, you know, sometimes what comes up comes out,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm working on that because I realize that sometimes if I'm in bitch mode, that it hurts other people's feelings and me saying that out loud. But I feel like I can recognize it sooner than later. But on the flip side of that, I also do not let people run over me.
Right.
You know, and there's some things that are better left unsaid. And they may go in my journal, and I may talk to you, or I may talk to Nancy, or I may talk to someone that, you know, I have respect for that in recovery, but, you know, not everything has to be said.
You are correct. You know, that, and on that note, I'm going to kind of go off topic here. Not everything has to be said. And this is an extreme thing that I have done in sobriety. So, and I'm going to say that it's been like in the past 10 years. Okay. So I still have things to work on, being way on down the path in recovery. So there was no middle of the road solution with my mouth. I tried to pause when agitated. I was always the talker. I never listened. And then I came into recovery and I had to listen, and that just didn't work for me. And I went back to the liquor store and I went through, a couple of temporary sponsors, and really not even that. The fellowship alone started to get tired of me. Anyway, I finally, my sponsor said to me, she said, Christy, you talk too much. And I'll never forget that. Just hurt my feelings so bad. She said, you talk too much. Be quiet. And it was just that simple. And that was a game changer, And so I learned, I read a book, Me and My Big Mouth by Joyce
Myers.
Mm-hmm.
Tico, stop.
And, Tico, stop. Sorry, it's puppy dog.
Tico.
He's just being a dog. So, anyway, I read that book, and I try to get better about my mouth, and I learned a lot about the mouth, but I've always been a very outspoken person. And I don't beat around the bush when it comes to recovery, especially about recovery. I mean, this is a deadly disease, and we're just going to get on with it, And the more you learn in recovery, it works for you and against you, especially in regards to all the normies and your family, because they're not in recovery and you are, and it's like, well, I want you, what about this defect of character that you got going on, blah blah blah. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say this. I went to the extreme of just not saying anything at all.
Yeah.
And my sponsor called me out. My old sponsor back in Nashville and this sponsor currently in Florida, both of them said to me, why did you sweep it under the rug? And I said, because it's just not worth it. I don't want to deal with it. And they were like, every time that you do that, it will repeat itself. What is ignored is always repeated.
That's true.
What is allowed will always return. Always.
Yeah.
And so you didn't like it, what that other person did. And so you didn't say anything to them. You swept it under the rug. But you're using me as the complaint department. She said, I'm not the complaint department. You need to speak up. And I was just like, oh man, here we go. I had to learn to choose my words very carefully. And my sponsors have given me, it's given me new ways to get my point across. Because I was just so to the point. And they're like, hold on a minute, there's a softer, kinder way of communicating. And I had to be humble enough to let them do that. But a good example, I'll say this and shut up because I know we're running out of time. A good example was, there's this little lady who I run into her every Wednesday, and she's very soft-spoken, but she always takes a little stab at me as she's walking by. She just takes a little stab and keeps on walking. And I just let her go. And then it dawned on me, this has been going on for about a month and a half. And she really got under my skin the other day. And so I'm squarely confronted with everything that my sponsors have taught me. And so I stood up for myself. I said, you know what, girlfriend? It is not the end of the world. It is not that serious. If you don't like it, you don't have to look at it. Love you, mean it. I hope you have a great day. I did. I stood up for myself.
How'd it go?
Well, she kept on walking. She heard me. We'll see how it goes this Wednesday when I show up. But I stood up for myself. And that's what it is. I had to stand up for myself. Because ultimately, I was afraid of myself. I was afraid of my own mouth. And I have to trust that God, I have to trust myself. I don't ever want to go back to not trusting myself. And if I pop off on her, I'll apologize. But anyway, yeah, I'm not a saint.
I don't want to be a saint.
I don't either. It's boring as hell. And I have no intentions of being a saint. And God knows that.
I don't want to be a saint. I'm good. I mean, but I'm open at least. I mean, I feel that I'm open to learning. I'm open to continuing being a student. I love what you said about, I love the phrase that when you're talking about sponsorships and, saying solution, and how about they're solution sergeants?
Yeah. Yeah.
The solution sergeant.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'll have to write that one down. Okay. So we want to thank y'all for being here and talking about freedom with us. We're always here for you.
Absolutely.
You can reach out anytime. The email is info@pursuitofrecovery.com. It'll be in the notes. And myself, Amy.
Christy.
We are here for you and hope you have a fabulous rest of your week. And
call us, reach out, email, anything. You are not alone. Anything that you need, reach out to us. We
absolutely.
are here for you.
We are. All right. Love ya.
Okay.
Need it.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya.